All right, y'all, welcome to the show. Got a lot of stuff to dive into today, so in just a second, we have a dire warning that was laid out on both CNN and MSNBC by an NYU professor. A lot to say about that. We have my boy, Stephen A. Smith, is officially snuggling up to MAGA more and more as the days go by. That's pretty sad. We'll get to Mehdi Hasan repeatedly pounding Piers Morgan over and over again in a beautiful clip. Then later on, MAGA's Greenland scam is officially busted. You have a British journalist who mercilessly destroys Elon Musk. And Joe Rogan's fans have turned on him. They've turned on him. This has got to be the 14th time they've turned on him within the past few years. But this one is interesting. So we'll talk about that and more. Everybody do me a big favor. Please subscribe to the channel. As y'all know, that helps out massively in the algorithm and it costs you nothing at all. It's huge. It's huge. I can't overstate how big it is. And then beyond that, thank you to everybody who supports this show on Patreon. We couldn't do it without you guys. You guys keep this show going. Small dollar donations keeps us going. Remember, guys, this is real independent media, not fake independent media. We're not talking to any advertisers or sponsors or corporations or billionaires or foreign governments. It's you guys and the default YouTube ads. That's how we fund this show. Very proud of that fact. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it. So there's a professor at NYU by the name of Scott Galloway, and he's been making the rounds on CNN and MSNBC, and he's been sounding the alarm. He's given us a dire warning here. Let's listen.
A lot of these tech billionaires are kind of following or trying to play catch up, I guess, with Elon Musk and making inroads with the new administration.
And the best trade of 2024 was Elon Musk put $250 million into the Trump campaign. And since then, the value of his companies and his stake in those companies is up by about $140 billion. So that's about a 5,600% return.
And that's not any change in in Tesla, in the output or anything.
Nothing to do with the company.
Right.
Nothing to do with their operating margins, their innovation, their sales. It's based on a general assumption that America has become a full kleptocracy like Russia, that the largest, deepest pocketed customer in the history of our modern economy, the U.S. government, will effectively is now pay to play and will shuffle contracts, monies, and impose regulatory punishment on the competitors to the companies who do not invest in the Republican Party or in his inaugural campaign, as evidenced by the fact that very few of these tech executives invested in the inaugural campaign fund for Biden, and they are all doing it for Trump.
In other words, that's how and why Elon Musk is now the richest man in the world by far. What he just described right there. That this is irrational market hype based on the fact that people know Elon is snuggled up to power, snuggled up directly to Trump, has a direct line not only to Trump but also to the Republican Party, which is the governing party. This is the recognition that, okay, you win, right? So give him more money, give him more power, and anybody who bends the knee and kisses the ring of MAGA is going to get that same treatment. This is complete and utter oligarchy, kleptocracy. Now it's out in the open. We've been in oligarchy for a while, but back in the day, there was a veneer over it, right? This veneer of democracy and capitalism. Now that veneer is gone. Now it's all out in the open, and you have the world's richest man helping to direct policy in this country.
Gone full kleptocrat. And if you don't think this hurts everyone, this raises prices, and for the little guy or the companies that don't want to engage in this type of pay for play, it hurts them. This will increase prices and weaken our democracy. This is absolutely no different than how Putin became the wealthiest man in the world.
Do you think this is a long-term change in the political direction of these tech companies, or would they shift course when the president-elect leaves office?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's two things going on here. This is good for shareholder value for Meta to not have to live up to the standards of traditional media companies. News Corp decided to circulate misinformation around Dominion voting machines, despite the fact they knew that was false information. They were sued because it resulted in economic harm against Dominion, and they were punished to the tune of about $750 million. What happened at News Corp on Fox was a dumpster fire compared to the nuclear mushroom cloud of what took place on Meta, yet Meta is immune. So what you have is these companies that are circulating or kind of a misinformation lollapalooza, quite frankly, are just running away with it in terms of profitability, in terms of shareholder value. So they're totally driven by shareholder value. They're doing their job. We're not doing our job in terms of electing representatives who have the backbone to stand up to attempts to weaponize the government and still believe in a democratic America where there's competition, where misinformation, where a lack of truth, a lack of trust in our institutions remain pillars of our society. That seems to be that seems to be eroding. But they will go where the puck goes, and that is whatever increases the value of their shares.
And that's why you keep seeing all of these robber baron billionaires, one after the other, bending the knee, making the trek to Mar-a-Lago and giving Trump $1 million checks for his inauguration. That's why you're seeing that. It's pay to play. It's, hey, keep the corporate welfare coming, keep the subsidies and government checks coming, keep the tax cuts and the deregulation coming, and we will be your servants. We will be your servants. All right, but he's not done yet. He's got more for us. So here's Scott Galloway, this time on MSNBC. And this is, for Morning Joe, this is a massive truth bomb. Here we go.
Once you get above a certain level of wealth, you get no incremental happiness. So why on earth would you not go back to a tax policy of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where, say, above, pick a big number, 10 million, you actually pay more than 10%, maybe more than 20%, maybe more than 50%, because the difference between 30,000 a year for a household and 50,000 is enormous to the well-being of that household. Low-income kids in low-income households have higher resting blood pressure, but the difference between making 10 million a year and 15 million a year offers you no happiness. But these individuals have weaponized government, and we risk revolution, whether it's CEOs being murdered in the street, whether it's a Me Too movement that had righteous components of it, or Black Lives Matter. What are these movements? They are targeting the wealthy. We are in the midst of a series of small revolutions to correct income inequality. And the reason we put an insurrectionist and a rapist in office is because for the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. Why? Because the majority of households are having the oxygen sucked out of the room, such that a small number of individuals and a small number of companies can be worth more than nation states. Income inequality is out of control. Our tax policy has gone full oligarch.
That room is not ready for those kinds of truth bombs. That room is not prepared for that, because these are all, good little loyal servants to the establishment and to the donor class. That's exactly who's in that room right now. So you could tell they're a little bit like, whoa, dog, what the hell? We were not expecting all that. So I actually have a slight disagreement with him there. I think that the anger that you're going to see bubbling up and boiling over, I think that anger is going to appear more scattershot, going to appear more random, going to appear more disconnected from any particular issue, right? Because in this country, we don't have an awakened class consciousness, right? And that's why you see the pendulum swing from the left to the right. You see Obama winning, and you see Trump winning, and then you see Biden winning, and you see Trump winning again. The consistent part of every election is change. People want big change, and they don't know where to go to get that big change, right? Bernie offered it, but he wasn't able to become president. And now we're dealing with the fallout of that. We're dealing with the consequences of that. And now, between witnessing firsthand climate collapse, which is happening right in front of us, witnessing the absolute implosion of our institutions, which I now think you could argue is complete after January 6th and the fake electors slate and Trump's 91 criminal charges and the Supreme Court basically granting him full immunity, and now him coming back in charge. The George Floyd protests were really just the beginning. Occupy Wall Street was just the beginning. The George Floyd protests were just the beginning. I think you are going to see real strife. And I also happen to think we're in the biggest market bubble in the history of our economy, worse than 1929. We're going to talk about that in the future with Ben Norton on Crystal Kyle and Friends. But the bubble is colossal. And as soon as that bubble bursts, you're talking about real pain and devastation, the likes of which we haven't seen since arguably 1929 and the Great Depression. That's what we're looking at. And the problem is, yes, people feel like they're not getting a fair shot. People feel like the system doesn't make sense, but that has not been harnessed in a positive direction yet. So when you see a fallout occur, when you see violence in the streets, when you see protests and riots, when you see the collapse of social order, it's not going to be as nice and neat as we would all like to think. It's not going to be as organized as, say, the civil rights movement was, where they're all out there protesting the Million Man March, and they have clear goals, and they have a clear reason for being out there and clear policy aims. We are not going to see that. I mean, it's on us to give it direction, to give it order, to give it clear policy goals, right? Universal basic income, 4-day work week, universal health care for everybody, higher wages, right to a union, etc. It's on us to do that, but it's just going to look like chaos. It's just going to look like mayhem. It's just going to look like social collapse. It's just going to look like everything's falling apart. I mean, you tell me, we're seeing some of it right now with the climate collapse as to what's happening in LA. Does it look orderly? Does it look like people are connecting the right dots? I mean, the reality is this is all because of climate change, but you don't see that that's the initial reaction. You just see people like their lives being turned upside down, not knowing what to do, not knowing where to go, not knowing where the leaders are. That's what we're witnessing. But he's given a dire warning. Basically what he's saying is like, this is what FDR said back in the day. He was like, all right, wealthy robber barons, here's the deal. You could deal with me, or you could deal with the people with pitchforks that are coming right down the road behind me if you don't listen to me. And so it's time to give up some of that money. It's time for me to raise your taxes. It's time for you to reinvest that money into jobs programs, shovel-ready projects, the New Deal. It's time to give people a fair shot. Because if you don't give people a fair shot under American capitalism, there will be a communist revolution. That's the argument he made. And he was able to effectively save capitalism by moving us towards social democracy and giving people dignity, giving people a job, giving people a chance, right? But we don't have that same ideological framework just waiting for the moment the collapse happens anymore, right? There is no organized left in America today. And so God bless this guy for going out there and saying, look, man, you guys are going to have it. We're going to have to raise taxes on the wealthy. We're going to have to redistribute. Unless you guys want a revolution, we're already living in a kleptocracy. Do you want a revolution to go arm in arm with that? And then the other thing is, you guys know I've been saying this for a long time. I'm not convinced there will be a quote unquote revolution because we have so many good distractions nowadays, right? And it keeps everybody sort of purposely stupid and distracted 24/7. So are we going to be able to harness whatever energy is out there in a positive direction? But here's what I would bet on. I would bet on social order collapse. I would bet on things going in the wrong direction. I would bet on bodies in the streets at some point over some issue, the likes of which I cannot predict at the moment. But when things get bad enough, right? And I think we're definitely going to see that when the next bubble pops. When things get bad enough, the ruling class is going to be shook. And they're going to probably go all out, crack down martial law style in order to try to return order. But you can't really return order when people don't have a home to go back to, when people can't pay the bills, when people can't make it work. You're going to deal with permanent unrest in a scenario like that. And this is a warning coming directly from an NYU professor. So if you don't take my word for it, some asshole YouTuber, take his word for it, because this is coming, especially now with the Trump administration being in there, kleptocracy being obvious, more tax cuts for the rich, more deregulation, more tax cuts for corporations, letting the wealthy loot the treasury, bailing out the crypto market, which is coming. As all that goes on, there's going to be more social unrest. It's going to be tough to deal with. So heed the warning in advance. Heed the warning in advance. You better give people a fair shot or prepare for the worst.
Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.